and I am going to move us along. There's someone just double checking a Zoom message to me. I'm on the next panel, seem to be having a Zoom issue. Could someone help me? I'm assuming somebody took care of that message. Yes, good, because you're here. All right, I'm going to just start with, this is the part of the hearing where we move from government reps to people who ask to testify. And so the rules change a little bit. We have the full panel testify in a row for 3 minutes each. Then we open it up to any legislators who want to ask the panel questions for a total of 3 minutes each. And your ranker and chair status are no longer relevant. So let's start with Empire State Indivisible, Danielle Brecker, co-leader organizer. Legal Women Voters, Laura Bierman, New York State Executive Director. The New York State Elections Commission Association, Dusty Zarni, and there's a much longer name. Democratic Caucus Chair Elections, Onondaga County Board Commissioner of Elections. And then Joanne Zidanis, I bet I did that wrong, Brennan Center for Justice. Let me see, is there anyone else on this panel on the next page? No. So if you'd start, please, in that order with Danielle from Empire State Indivisible. Good evening.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of funding the statewide public financing program in the full year 2022-2023 budget. I am Danielle Brecker, co-lead organizer of Empire State Indivisible. The Indivisible movement is predicated on holding our elected leaders to account. Empire State Indivisible is dedicated to policies that amplify the voices of New Yorkers in our democracy. We have been working with other grassroots groups in the Fair Elections for New York Coalition since 2018. Empire State Indivisible has canvassed across our state, asking New Yorkers to support policy and candidates. We have seen candidates with bold policy platforms struggle to raise money, stay in the race, reach voters, and get elected. We have seen the devastating and stifling influence of corporate and special interest money on our communities and communities across the state. The New York Small Donor Public Financing Program is key to changing this. We are pleased to see funding for the program in Governor Hochul's executive budget. We support the inclusion of $10.5 million for the administration of the program and $10 million for future matching funds in the executive budget. Today, we ask the Senate and Assembly to increase the appropriation for future matching funds to $40 million to be in line with the projected cost of the first legislative cycle of the program. We ask that the program be as strong and as bold as the many diverse candidates it will uplift. It is important that the program receives adequate funding this year to build confidence in the program for both candidates and voters. The potential benefits of this program cannot be overstated. Public financing can help stymie the disproportionate influence of large corporate and special interest donors on our democracy. The weight and influence of these corporate and special interest donations are at odds with the solutions we need for our communities. Public financing is key to fostering a multiracial democracy. Folks from all walks of life can run and win without needing to know or depend on donors who can write big checks. Together with voting reforms, this policy brings more people into the democratic process. We do not have to look beyond the new New York City Council to see how well it can work. Funding this program now is an investment in our democracy's future. We commend the budget lines in the executive budget and strongly urge you, the legislature, to increase the funding for future matching funds to $40 million. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify in support of this important reform.
Thank you very much for testifying. And now the League of Women Voters.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm Laura Ladd Bierman, Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of New York State. The League is a nonpartisan grassroots organization with a mission to educate the public to become engaged members of their communities and informed voters. We believe voting should be made as easy as possible for all New Yorkers, and we greatly appreciate the tremendous gains that have been made in the last couple of years in making voting more accessible, and we applaud the legislature for enacting these reforms. However, many of these reforms still have not been sufficiently funded, particularly with voter participation this year expected to significantly increase from last year. The expansion of early voting last year, with more poll sites now required and extended hours of the poll sites, was great, but only if funding is provided. We do not want these reforms to become unfunded mandates on the counties. The reappropriated funds for county boards of elections must remain in the budget and increased if possible for early voting options to be available for all voters in all counties. The current outdated process used by New York State to collect, process, send, receive, and count absentee ballots is slow, cumbersome, and costly. Reforms for absentee voting are greatly needed, but again, only if funded. Ballot tracking systems could give voters confidence that their ballot was received and counted. Ballot drop boxes could make voting easier and safer for their ballots. Return postage on ballots could delete a cost to voters to vote. This is a big election year, and many voters now prefer to vote by absentee ballot. We don't want to discourage that. Two final comments on the budget. The League supports the proposal for poll sites on college campuses, but asks for expansion to include primary elections and early voting in addition to the general election day. The League also applauds the proposed elimination of the 25-day statutory voter registration deadline. Many voters become engaged in the election toward the end of the election season, but by then it's too late for them to register and vote. Elections are often the last item on the list when it comes to county budgets, and many county boards operate with limited funds. The League urges the legislature to seriously consider the cost of new election improvements when introducing their proposed budgets, and to consider setting up a yearly fund specifically for enhanced election reform like early voting and absentee voting. New York State is finally in the 21st century with regard to voting, but we are still funding our elections as if they're being conducted in pre-technology era. Recent media articles have noted how hard it is for voters to vote in New York State as compared to other states, which is a surprise to many New Yorkers. In order to realize the enhanced goals of the legislative leaders and governor, we urge that serious funding commitment to the State Board of Elections and County Board of Elections be enacted. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. And our next testifier is Dustin Zarni.
Thank you very much for having me. I have submitted written testimony, which will go into detail what I'm going to sum up here just a little bit. However, I want to thank the New York State Legislature for the many reforms that they've given us. Yes, it has provided us with a lot more work at our county boards of elections. However, this is good work and work worth doing. We do note, though, that this next year we face a huge increase in work with the expansion of early voting and the moving of the canvassing of absentee ballots to pre-election day counts, both reforms that I personally and my caucus supports. However, without state funding and state aid, we can see a disparity of resources going from county to county, as local county legislators often do not fund the boards of elections at equal rates from county to county, leaving citizens at the whim of frugal budgets, and oftentimes boards of elections being treated as the bastard stepchildren of county government. So we do ask that the New York State Legislature consider the funding levels that you gave us in 2019. When you had us implement early voting and electronic poll books, there was a $10 million aid to localities fund and a $25 million capital fund. If that was enacted and added to the governor's budget, which is a great budget for the State Board of Elections, but leaves the county boards of elections out of the mix. If those funds are enacted by the legislature, as it has traditionally been the role of the legislature to add those budgets, we can purchase high-speed scanners. We can bring in workers to help with the absentee canvasses to fulfill the goal of having these votes counted by election night. We can have electronic poll books on election day. Many counties have not rolled those out and only have them on early voting because that's all the money that they had to implement those. We could replace some of our aging precinct scanners. These machines, some of our counties have had the same ImageCast scanner since 2007, and they're ending their useful life. We need state help to be able to amplify the resources at these local boards of elections to perform the reforms that you have tasked us to give. So please consider adding these budget lines into the budget. And yes, please consider making these a permanent solution for funding elections in New York State. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dustin. And our last testifier on this panel, Joanna Zdanis. Help me, sorry.
Denise, thank you. Good evening, Chairs Weinstein and Kruger and members of the legislature. My name is Joanna Denise, and I'm Senior Counsel at the Brennan Center for Justice. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of funding for our elections and voting infrastructure in this year's budget. With malicious and racist attacks on the franchise across the country, New York's leadership in fostering a stronger and more inclusive democracy has never been more urgent. We're grateful to the members of this body for championing policies that expand access to the vote and break down barriers to the political process. One of those is the state's new small donor public financing program, which will launch this November. It's the strongest and most ambitious response in the nation to Citizens United. The Brennan Center works on this issue nationally, and I can tell you that jurisdictions across the country are watching to see if New York can implement its program successfully. A modest investment now will help ensure that the program lives up to its promise of giving constituents donating only modest amounts a more important role in fundraising. We're pleased to see funds in the executive budget for both program administration and for a portion of the matching funds that will be distributed to participating candidates. But like my co-panelist, Ms. Brecker, we urge the legislature to increase the appropriation for matching funds from $10 million to $40 million this fiscal year, which is approximately half the amount projected to be dispersed the program's first cycle. It's common practice to build up program funding well in advance of the first election year that candidates use public financing. Prominent programs like that of Connecticut and Montgomery County, Maryland are just two examples. So providing adequate funds now will build candidate and voter confidence in the program's solvency and help campaigns plan their fundraising strategies using small contributions from constituents. Another important reform, automatic voter registration, is going to launch in January 2023, and we support continued funding to build out the state's online voter registration system, which is critical to AVR success. And outside of the budget, New York can lead where Congress has failed by adopting the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act of New York, which, if enacted, would be the strongest voting rights law in the country to fight race-based voter suppression. And to fully deliver on these reforms, this legislature must support improvements in elections administration. There are simple yet effective solutions that are available now to promote better voter service. And of course, we also support more state funding for local boards of election to help address the persistent resource challenges that they face. Thank you for your continued leadership in strengthening our democracy. We stand ready to assist, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you all. And I'm looking for raised hands. And I saw Assemblymember Jacobson first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank all the panelists for being in favor of expanding democracy, expanding the vote. As I know Commissioner Sanzi knows, because I rely on his organization and the local commissioners as a resource. I pushed last year for additional funding, and I was successful, and I'm doing the same this year. We've done incredibly great things, early voting, being able to correct absentee ballots, Now we're going to be able to start counting earlier, so we look like every other state in the nation to know our results on time. But unfortunately, all these things take money. And believe it or not every commissioner and is in favor of these reforms. So it's important that we do it on a state level as far as the funding, and I'll be pushing for it. And I hope that you will also continue to push not only on the state level, but on the local level, because as you know, politicians do respond, and it's important that you make your voice heard. So I stayed through the end for this hearing because I wanted to be here for this group. Just to let you know that you have an advocate here, letters going out the next day or two for the budget. And we have to keep pushing because there's more to do, but it does take money. So I don't have a question because I know that what you're all in favor of. And I just want to thank you for hanging in there and for advocating for our democracy. And voting should be simple and easy. Doesn't mean it isn't expensive. So thanks.
Thank you, Assembly Member. I see Robert Jackson's hand up. Senator Jackson. Did we lose you, Robert? I know Senator Jackson had to go home today because he tested positive for COVID. And I'm wondering whether he's been frozen out.
We are asking him to start video and unmute, but so far unsuccessfully.
Pero ¿cómo eso se va a lograr? Y es porque a veces ni la
That's not
gobernadora
Robert Jackson's
sabe cómo
voice.
lo va a lograr. ¿Tiene alguna idea? Pues no lo sabe.
Who's speaking Spanish? Would you go unmute?
Nos da la oportunidad al senador Jackson y la asambleísta Al Taylor.
Hi, Robert Jackson. I see you, and I'm hearing a woman speaking to us in Spanish, and yet it's not you.
Am I up, Liz?
You are up.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. I'm just juggling. I'm juggling with some other people.
Can you
but let me
turn the
just
other
say
person off for a moment?
Yes, I think I
Oh, good.
did.
Okay.
There.
Makes it tricky
So-
this way.
Well, first, I want to thank you all for coming in and staying the course of the entire hearing. And I wholeheartedly support all of the funding for early voting, for absentee voting, and for ethics reform. I mean, understanding that this is democracy, and we must be able to make sure democracy continues where people can vote no matter what, and people can register up to the last day if they have not registered. As long as they're telling the truth, they're citizens and they can vote. That's what it's about. This is democracy. I don't want to do anything to clamp down people's right to vote and exercise their right to vote. And so I say to all of you, my colleagues who may disagree with me, and those that agree, our job is to make sure that we represent the people of New York State. This is the Empire State. Let's take the lead to ensure that no matter who you are, no matter if you're black, white, yellow, green, or blue, whether you're rich or you're poor, that your rights are not being violated by suppressing their right to either register to vote or to change their party designation within a certain period of time, or to vote by absentee without an excuse, and deal with ethics reform. And so I support wholeheartedly this panel, and especially the League of Women Voters, and moving forward and coming and saying what needs to be said. And as you can see, it's almost at the end of an entire day's hearing, but I'm still here pushing for it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As someone that has been registered to vote way back when I turned 18, and I'm exercising my right to speak up for people's right to vote and not to be suppressed and denied the right to vote for whoever they want to vote for.
Do you know that the senator's nickname among his Senate fans is Still in the Fight? Senator
way.
Still in the Fight. Thank you,
Thank you.
Robert. And
Thank
you
you,
take
Madam
care of
Chair.
your health, please, okay?
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Amar, did you have your hand up or you're just in the box so I'm seeing you? You don't have your hand up. All right, I have one question for Dustin. You were making a wonderful pitch for the need for additional money to the County Board of Elections. Is there a number?
I believe the funding that this legislature provided in 2019 is a good model to do again this year. And that was $10 million in aided localities, which allowed us to have more flexibility, bring in staffing and offset the cost of early voting. And then $25 million in capital funding, which will allow us to replace aging voting systems, bring in high-speed scanners for absentees, as well as some counties needing to expand their their electronic poll book fleet to be able to move those to election day, to be able to accomplish all the reforms. I believe those two items from 2019 would be of use this year.
Okay, so you never got the 25 million capital, right?
We did. We spent it. Many of us spent it, and many small counties have already exhausted that, and they were not able to expand their electronic poll books to election day because they just didn't have enough money. It was only for early voting. Now that we're going to count absentees before election day, we need these electronic poll books on election day to make sure people don't vote twice, and also we need high-speed scanners to be able to do those counts for absentees while we're also running early voting and election day voting.
Got it. Thank you. I want to thank all four of you for your testimony here tonight. I also just want to give a shout out to my chair of elections, Elner Myrie, who could not be here but wanted to be, and who is very aware of all of the proposals that all four of you have made. So with that, I want to thank you very much for your participation and for staying so late with us.